Thank you. All right. How's everyone doing today? I'm pretty new here. You probably don't know me. My name is Mateo Ramiro Arguello. And I have some stories for you since some of you asked. And I think first, before we get into those stories of some of the experiences that I had and kind of where that pointed me, where that brought me, to go over where I came from. So I grew up in South America, in Ecuador. My father's Ecuadorian, my mother's from Colorado. So I'm what you call a medio gringo. And over there, I got to do a lot of things, and we'd come here for the summers. And then eventually we moved here in 1999 when the economy crashed. And I lived on the Front Range. And over there, I went through high school, and then I decided to join the Marine Corps. And the reason I chose the Marine Corps is because I wanted to be able to explore, get like battle hardened, so I could go exploring for lost cities and stuff in the Amazon. And I continued doing that for a while. And a big reason is to get those like these survival skills and to just train. And so in the Marine Corps, what I ended up doing was infantry. They told me not to. They kept the recruiters like, just do anything but infantry. And I was like, no, that's going to teach me the best. They were probably right. Probably should have picked a different MOS, but that's the route I went. And I ended up going to Iraq. And then in 2008, we went over to Afghanistan. But when we went over to Afghanistan, it was a little different. So I was part of a pilot program where they brought like infantry platoon like a people and they put them into intelligence roles. So I got to be trained up by retired FBI and CIA agents and a bunch of different schools to be embedded with my infantry platoon in Afghanistan. So I was already a nerd to begin with. Okay. And so this gave me like more training to analyze and explore more than I ever expected. So when we went over to Afghanistan, they threw us in a place that no coalition force had ever been before, right? In the middle of this place called Bakwa province. And the rest of our battalion took over from the British in Helmand. And it was crazy. But in all this chaos, I was able to not only do my job well, but I was also able to look for ancient ruins. And I found like all kinds of ancient ruins out there, even in Iraq, like a lost city, but I just didn't have as much capability to go and look at them. So once that was done, I went on a third deployment. We call it a booze cruise, where you go through Southeast Asia, just drinking and getting to know the locals. But then I got back, and I got back, and it was hard. I got out of the Marine Corps, and they don't, like you go in already with a lot of heavy baggage, and then in these military systems, you gain more. And so I came out with a lot of fears, insecurities, and a lot of trauma. And I had to kind of work through that. And this is important for later down the road. But once I had gone to this point where I kind of had found my freedom, I fought a lot of my demons. I was in this really like clear place. And I remember I had just gone back from Ecuador because after the Marine Corps, I went to Ecuador. I started my first business. Utter failure. My neighbors came and broke into my house when I wasn't there and like stole all my merchandise. I was trying to import these actually, Vibrant Five Fingers, because they were brand new. And it didn't work out. So I came back and then I had to just deal with my own trauma. So I'd gone a job on the Front Range in Colorado Springs at a place called Seven Falls. And I had worked there in high school, and it's was a place like that I had known really well. It's right up against Pike National Forest, right up against Pikes Peak, and I'd been there multiple like summers in high school, and so the whole area is considered haunted. You know, the whole area like has weird like tunnels or and creatures and ghosts and orbs. But half the time, people are going up there and they're getting drunk, they're getting high. So I dismissed it. I dismissed a lot of these stories as just my friends or hearsay. And it wasn't until I was in this moment where I had a girlfriend at the time named Caitlin, and every day after work in the evening, we drive down from Seven Falls and just go outside to the picnic tables and we just hang out till late at night. And it was a place where, honestly, I thought I was the scariest thing there. There's real irony in this because what I would do is that, like, other teenagers would come through, they'd be drunk, they'd be high, and I would just start howling. I would go, and then I would just run closer and they'd howl back. And every time they'd hear the howl closer and closer to them, until I was like right outside like their little picnic camp, and you always hear that one person, everyone just be like, stop, stop, it's getting closer. And that one person would just let out that last howl, and then the howl would be right next to them. And they would just get in their vehicles and just leave. Okay. So I was like scaring people. I was freaking people out. I was just being part of the lure of the place. So on this particular night, Caitlin had been feeling off the last few nights, like feeling like we were being watched, like things were off. And, like I should have listened to women's intuition. It took me several times of this in order to really, for that to be ingrained into me. And I just dismissed it. But on this particular night, we were just like hanging out. And once again, she was feeling weird. She was saying, "Do you hear that?" And I'm like, "No." And then we start she starts hearing things like being thrown at us, and I just think it's the what are they called, the scrub oak, like they're just dropping sticks, they're just dropping like their acorns. So I tell her it's nothing, don't worry about it. And then we start hearing things on the side of the road, just going through this really dense brush, and these scrub oaks are huge, like some of the biggest I've ever seen. And like there's clearly like creatures walking through. And she's like, "Do you hear that?" And I'm like, "It's just mule deer." Because we have like a ton of mule deer on the front range, as you know. So again, like I just dismiss this. And then it persists. So we're there 30 minutes and then we're getting the same noise, something, and there's several distinct noises coming from the brush just on the side of the road, maybe 30 feet in. And by this point, I'm like, well, a deer is not going to just chill making noise like that. It's going to pass through. And so now I'm getting curious, and she's getting scared, and she thinks we should leave. But I again, once again, dismiss that. So I go over, and I'm not prepared. I just have like the phone, and so I go over to the side of the road, and I just turn the light on because I can hear these distinct sound signatures right inside. The crumpling leaves, breaking sticks, and I go to the first one. It stops making noise. But I hear two other sound signatures further down. And so I walk to the next one, trying to look. It stops too. And so I move to the last one. And as I'm moving, I hear something hit behind me. So I look over and I look down on the ground, and right there is a pebble that's like it's still moving from being thrown. And I think, okay, that's weird. I look over to see her, to see if she threw like a pebble. It's too far away, to throw something that small. But I say, maybe that's exactly what happened. That's what I tell myself. And I go to the third one, and it stops making noise. Now everything's just dead quiet. And so then I turn, and I'm just gonna walk back and report to her what happened. So I start walking back, and all of a sudden, in that second place, right, I got the like a pebble throwing. I see it right in front of me in like my with my light on, go from the forest like this and just hit the ground in front of me. And now I can't just blame it on my girlfriend. I can't just say, "Oh yeah, she's throwing pebbles at me." So I go back just to make sure, and I'm just trying to protect myself at this point. So I know this is bizarre. 30 minutes, something making noise and just throwing pebbles at me. So I go and ask her, like, "Hey, did you throw pebbles at me?" And now she's freaking out even more. She's like, "No, of course I didn't." So instead of leaving, I say, well, let's go in there. And she's like, she doesn't want to go in. So it's like, I'll go by myself, but she doesn't want to stay either. So we go in this deer trail, and there's a deer trail that goes along this road. So it's not anything, you can understand why I assumed it was just deer, right? So we go in there and we get close to the area where the first sound signature was. And now we're just vegetation everywhere. You can barely see in front of you. And we just have our phone phone lights to guide us. And we go, and I'm getting weird feelings. I don't see anything. Like I should have heard something move in the area that we went to where the first sound signature was. And the fact that we didn't kind of has me unnerved. But at the same time, I'm thinking people are just trying to mess with me. I've been messing with people for months. Why wouldn't they do the same thing? But behaviorally, things aren't adding up, right? Like teenagers aren't going to wait like 30 minutes or more making subtle noises to try to get your attention. I'm not even willing to wait that much to mess with people. So things aren't adding up. These rocks, these pebbles are being thrown at me. Kaylin's felt like this was been going on for a while. And so we walk a little bit away from the area, still really close. And we stop and we're just talking about it. And then what happens? Some new like teenagers that are drunk and high come on one of the nearby camping or picnic sites nearby us. So I forget all about this thing and I start doing like my little cows and I freak them out and they drive off and we're just like eagling right there. So so far everything's been pretty peaceful. Everything's been pretty quiet. And so we go back out. We go back out like this trail onto the road. And as soon as we get over to the other side of the street, that's when all hell breaks loose. And I was not prepared for this at all whatsoever. So to give you an idea of what's happening is these huge scrub oak, which are just massive, tall, start shaking violently. All of a sudden, you hear like the whole forest on the other side of the road just come alive, and like big stones and big limbs are being thrown at us, but like it feels deliberately like they're trying to miss. But it's just all happening at once. And then you hear it's like something like a freight train charging through the forest, and it should have been on us in seconds. And the fact that it wasn't, it felt like a bluff charge. So during this whole commotion, I'm I'm grabbing her and bringing her to her vehicle, and I say, meet me at the gas station. It's over on 7th Street over there. And I was in a Honda Civic at the time, so when I tried to leave, as all this is going on, I couldn't see, my beams couldn't go up high enough to see into the tree line, but it was enough, okay, because this was something that I couldn't explain, all occurring at the same time in a place where I felt safe, the place where I thought I was like the scariest thing out there. And we it's so hard to explain, like just the amount of power that you saw, like when these trees moving, these rocks being thrown, like the mass moving through these forests during this moment. Like that's, but it terrified me, it traumatized me. And so we went over, we got to the gas station, we were just breathing, trying to like process this, and we talked about it. Like I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going crazy because the things did not add up. And so the next day, after we talked about it and I realized, okay, something's up, I'm like, I'm going back. So I went back during the day because I need to collect evidence. I need to find something to understand, because it's in my nature try to dismiss things until I find evidence to support it. And I know a lot of the times that's also been a piece that's just helped protect me from things I'm not ready to accept yet. So we go back the next day. We get there and we go into the forest where we heard this, and and I have pictures, like there are massive branches that have been snapped. And then we see the area where this thing went down to the road, and there are impressions. One's, and they look like feet. One's like a 16 inches, and the other one's 18 inches in the like in the dry leaves. And I'm thinking, could this be a bear? But I'm like, a bear can't throw anything at me like that. Like there is, could it be a raccoon? No, we had these other pieces that occurred. I can't just dismiss this. I can't interpret it. I can't find a reasonable explanation beyond what I keep concluding, and that's that we must have run into some North American hominid. And I try to even push, and at the time I'd been working out, I was around 175 pounds, and me pushing into the leaves will not leave an impression. They just crumple back up. And then I even try jumping. I try anything I can. And so this mass was very heavy, and there were multiple ones, like at two different tracks, and I heard three sound signatures. So then what I do is I come back later that night because I want to see how well my light can shine into here, see how far back I can look. So I'm very methodical. Like I really try my best to try to find tests to understand and identify what's happening. And we go back. She comes with me, and now what I know about the North American hominid is that they were probably around, which scared me later when I had that recognition. They were probably watching us do this, and I went in with chem lights, and I would put one like like 5 feet in, another one at 20, another one at 30, so I could see how far back I could get. I went in there. I had her look with her phone with the light on. She couldn't see me at all. She had way better vision than I did. And even the 30-foot chem lights hanging in a tree, you couldn't see it because this place was so dense. So something could have easily, or a group of them, moved through there at night without being detected. Then we used my headlamp. I don't know, it was maybe 300 lumens, and I still couldn't be seen, even though I was talking to her directly. So that kind of changed like my course, my direction in kind of like where I was going in part of my life, because I had been, training wilderness survival at the time, learning how to live in the woods to go exploring further. And this became something that really stopped me because I was afraid to go into the wilderness. I was afraid to go at night. And I still ended up going, like, for example, a couple years later, I went up on Pikes Peak and lived there a whole winter, just living off the land, trying to test out my survival skills. But the whole time, I wouldn't stay out at night. I was heavily armed the whole time, and I was always on guard. And it took me years. Like, let me make this very clear, years. And it wasn't the only incident I had during this time at night. I had another one over on the Rampart Range by Glen Erie, and it was just something that was really difficult to discuss. So I could tell people about my Marine Corps experience, about losing so many friends, like the trauma I went to, and get sympathy. But as soon as I brought up, oh, I ran into like a 10-foot apex predator that could rip me apart, it's a lot harder to accept. It was hard for me to accept. I didn't even want to talk about it. And so it took me years. So I remember 2017, it was about maybe 6 years since the incident. I decided, you know what? I need to figure this out because I had the same trauma from the Marine Corps, but now with whatever this was going on in like what I considered my backyard. So I decided I was going to start documenting it. I was going to start like learning like the classes I needed to understand the environment and go and do this again, but this time understand what was going on. And so that kind of set me on a new journey. And I had another girlfriend at the time named Madison, and told her my plan. And I wanted to go up to the forest with her to get freaky. I mean, part of that was true, but that allowed us to go to the area nearby where I had this experience. And we were there 3 months every other night until we had an experience where the pebbles started throwing. And I hypothesized that the way they communicate, the way children communicate, the way, great apes communicate is through different channels. And one of those is like throwing pebbles or trying to play tag. And it's something that's at first glance seems weird and arbitrary because, like, what are they trying to tell me? And I overcomplicated it for a long time until I started having the experience and realized that it's a form of communication, right? Imagine if something that big came out all of a sudden and was like, "Hey, let's be friends." It'd be terrifying. Just the way me coming into the forest in that first encounter. Okay, so let's go back to the first encounter because this is important because I put things together and this is, my hypothesis. This is my view. This is my assessment. I think what happened is they were interacting with us, being very gentle in their way of communicating. And when I went in there, looked for them, and then started screaming and howling right next to them. And they waited strategically and tactically until I went across the road and they had an egress route before they went all hell went loose. And that was a response from me. It wasn't them innately just getting violent and being angry. It was because I went in there from their perspective and tried to look around and then started screaming and being aggressive. So just to clarify that piece. So we go in and we start and I started going every day. It was really tiring because I was going to school, I was working and staying up till like midnight, waking up like at 5, doing a walk around, like a mile walk around through the forest, looking for any changes in the environment. We found lots of changes in the environment. We had lots of interactions. We even saw them on thermal. Poor Madison, she was not ready. She was not ready. Remember the first time we started having pebbles throw, and she said, oh my God, they're real. Oh my God, they exist. Which was nice because before that, it was just like very skeptical. And it was just like, but then after that, she was just terrified. She had her own experiences. I did too. But I want to kind of get into the data because that's where I thrive. And that's finding the data, the evidence pieces that support the hypothesis and the experience. So, what we ended up finding were, of course, interactions, uh, pebble throws. When we fall asleep, we hear bangs on the door. These were recorded. And I think what we're just seeing is just behavior of, child or primate behavior, or even human behavior trying to get your attention. And they were interacting with us because we acknowledged them, they acknowledged us. And this became something that occurred for a whole month and a half before they moved on. And what we found in that month and a half was manipulation of the environment. So what I first found, and I dismissed because I dismissed a lot of things. And of course, there is like hard evidence, and then we have anecdotal evidence, and of course, circumstantial evidence. So what I'm going to present now is more circumstantial evidence. And in that circumstantial evidence, along the trails, because there's trails there. This is right. This is close to Colorado Springs. There's tons of people. So that was the hardest part in the beginning, just to accept that they were that close. But then again, mountain lions and bears will go right into the city to go get food. So why should I expect anything different? So the first thing I found was like small branches, nothing big, nothing crazy, that had been broken, and they formed like a trail, like blazing a trail through the brush, and eventually went to like these sites that it developed over this like a month and a half. But in the beginning, I was like, oh, it's just kids, but it kind of just stopped in the middle of the brush in these really dense like fields. And I kind of dismissed that at first until we started seeing these areas where they were throwing pebbles from, where they had broken the limbs down to create like a blind, because this was before the this was spring. This was before the leaves had come in. And then when I went back to retrace those areas where the breaks following like this trail system, it led to these massive nest sites, like a massive nest site, like almost if you ever look at like lowland gorillas, during the day they'll create depressions in the ground and create these nest sites. It was very similar to that. And I would say it was from here to here in circumference, and probably about like this deep, maybe 8 inches or more deep. It was massive, and there were multiple ones, and there were old ones, the new ones, and they were being these breaks following over to these sites. Now, of course, the first assumption that I made was, well, maybe we're seeing bear. But why were they going to break the branches? There's nothing on them, right? It's not, we're in the beginning of spring. There are no fruits. There's nothing, no berries, nothing to eat them. And the bear sites, at least from what I've been able to document and talking to different biologists, don't get that big. Then we started finding hair samples in these nest sites and in these areas. And these hair samples were very unique, where they, like one of the ones that we kept finding is that it went from gray to black, and they're hollow inside, so they don't have a medulla that you traditionally see. And normally Arctic animals have this. And I brought this to like the local school. We looked at it under a microscope, talked to like the zoologist. We brought it to like a well-known taxidermist, like kind of infamous in Canyon City, where it has like hundreds of different animals like in his basement, like the pelts. And it was really awesome to see him very skeptical at first. And he's like, I can identify it. And we brought these hair samples to him. And what was great for me is because there's a lot of things that I don't understand, like the medulla under the microscope, like it's not outside my skill set. I can, I can make assumptions, but for him to go look and show like the, the, the hair and try to find it by how coarse it is, the different types of colorations, and him not be able to find it, and then go downstairs to look for animals from around the world to see if anything was similar, and then be stumped. That was a good feeling because remember, I'm trying to prove this to myself at the same time as trying to have enough evidence that someone else uh, would be like convinced as well. So then we take this to the next step. I find other pieces of evidence that blow me away, because I go hunting a lot of times, small game, especially living up in the wilderness. And I started finding these deer pelts and bones that no serration marks, no entry exit wounds, that no cut marks. It looked like they had been skinned by just ripping the way you would a rabbit, like a sock. And that was insane for me. I started finding multiple ones of those, and then by them we started finding deer bones that had been broken while it was either recently dead or like still alive. And I started taking a forensic anthropology class at school to understand, decomposition and this type of what happens to animals. What we found is that whatever was doing these breaks, not leaving any bite marks or break marks or anything, was doing it with brute force. And we took it even to decomposition expert for the Parks and Wildlife, and she was very surprised to see it, and she said this is similar to when a vehicle hits like a deer. That was like the closest amount of force to break it like this. The bone marrow taken out. And so that could bring us to the next step. So the next step is we bring this evidence because we're also having a lot of people having reports down in the Canyon City area. Because I have a friend named Glenn that got involved because I built a YouTube channel around it to try to get more support and try to show my findings. And he started talking to people that had a lot of encounters, especially hunters down there over by the Arkansas River, by the Swallows. And we went down and we started showing this evidence to the lead wildlife biologist for Parks and Wildlife, and same with the decomposition expert. So we go down there. They let us into the Walker Ranch where they have their black-footed ferrets, one of the sites where they're trying to bring them back. And we present them the evidence. And I just found another like pelt. I just found another like group of deer bones that ended up being two deer piled on top of each other, all broken with the bone marrow taken out. And so we show them this, and let me be frank with you. They're used to people coming in with stories, right? Like having like a lot of inductive reasoning as to the conclusions that they reached. And so they were very, like most people, skeptical at first. And then we started showing them the evidence. We started explaining these things to them. We started showing the evidence along the river where we were finding like these Russian olives broken in weird ways. And I still don't know what it is. And by the end of this, they were willing to speculate with us on the existence of the North American hominid. Okay, which is good. So that means like we're finding pretty solid evidence where they are willing to even speculate because they're like, we don't know how to explain that. And that kind of brought me to the next chapter of this whole thing because this is just the beginning, right? So now we have the YouTube channel coming up. We have investors helping us with gear, coming out to do like expeditions. And we have Glenn, who is a great member of the team, talking to anyone. And he's getting reports, but he's not just getting reports about, this North American hominid. He's getting reports of all kinds of different things. People are seeing all kinds of things, okay? Like things like they call the dog man, like some baboon or giant, like, or werewolf type creature, some smaller type beings, giant tarantulas, things that for the beginning I just dismissed because it was too much. I was having a hard time just accepting an intelligent hominid like Sasquatch to even exist. But just understanding my background in infantry and intelligence, I could see easily how a very powerful, like a intelligent creature could elude us just using guerrilla warfare tactics, especially with our complacency and our assumption that doesn't exist. So I could easily accept that. and especially with my evidence that I found that supported their movements, how they moved, what they ate, all those things. But now, how do I accept and how do I integrate that into this new model that's starting to form? This new model that if we have to accept from very rational people, most of them, they're seeing all kinds of bizarre things that like I can't accept. I can accept maybe one or two large intelligent things, hominids or beings, but now we have like let's say 12 more that people are seeing, and the only way they're willing to talk is because Glenn will go out and ask them and say like, hey, you're safe to talk about it, and they'll tell us, and a lot of these encounters are on the YouTube channel. So what do we do with this, right? Because it's either we dismiss it and say they're delusional, or we're forced to expand the scope of what's accepted and see what it tells us, what the results are, which took me a long time because let me tell you, I was having trouble just still digesting everything that happened with this North American hominid. But eventually I got to a point where I had to kind of accept that there's more going on. And I don't know if we're seeing separate phenomena or the same or different. But one thing is clear that I want to bring up now, because now is a good time, and that's something that I clocked. One of the biggest things I connected with my Sasquatch experiences was the archetypal fear of the unknown that I had. And this is something that I didn't recognize till afterwards. I had this epiphany. I had gone into the forest with no weapons, nothing, and just sat in the area where I had these experiences. And that was me facing like my threshold, my fear of the unknown, and especially something like Sasquatch that represented something I had no control over, something that outpaced me in anything. And as soon as I had done that, as soon as I had made that switch, I stopped having experiences. I stopped having encounters. I stopped finding evidence. But, and this is what got really interesting, but people at this point, because I was like known on like a YouTube, they wanted to come with me to go look for Sasquatch. And I would tell them that's like looking for a mountain lion or finding evidence of one, right? Like you're going to come for a day or two and expect to find like an elusive animal. That's crazy, but they wanted to come anyway. So I was like, okay, sure, let's do this. And I kid you not, every time they came, either I saw something, and they always saw something. And then we found evidence to support it. And to me, that's way too high above chance. The probability that shouldn't happen. In the way we understand the physical world, the way we understand the probabilities, we shouldn't be able to go out each time when someone wants to have like is ready to face whatever the Sasquatch means to them, and they have these experiences. We find evidence and like to support it. And then I thought something else is going on. There can't be that can't just happen each time. And I just keep seeing this like convergence of these data points pointing in a different direction. They're pointing away from my initial assessments. So what does that all mean? How do we explain my phenomena where there's clear evidence? It's a very much flesh and blood being. It's moving around the way you and I would have to through the wilderness. It clearly needs a diet, clearly is eating, clearly is using egress routes, taking advantage of the terrain. But then we talk to people that have seen these beings just disappear, not like run off into the wilderness, like literally vanish, like vanish, disintegrate in front of them or in their homes. They see it pass through walls. What do we do with that? For a lot of the most time, we dismiss it. But we don't do that as much with ghosts, do we? Now, I think this is important, like to kind of see the difference here, because with ghosts, we understand that's a whole different phenomenon than us. We understand that they are something else than what we are, and they have abilities to do things that we cannot. And I think like when we have like these experiences with these cryptids or other things, it's easy to say they have this ability to just move through dimensional portals. But we wouldn't say that about ghosts because we know us as a reference point. But that also constitutes two separate phenomena going on. And so my question I started asking was, when we see these cryptids or UAPs, whatever you want to call it, because now we have to add in these other pieces that are also showing the same type of behavior and patterns. What are we getting? Are we seeing the same type of phenomena or separate ones? And I think we're seeing separate ones. And I think there's a larger overarching piece to this because we can see it with ghosts, but we don't have enough data and information to really know it with everything else that we're seeing. But we do have other pieces that we talk about all the time, synchronicities. You know, Carl Jung, if you ever read his Red book, we have these synchronicities. If you ever read like Joseph Campbell, we have these mythos, we have like these archetypes. Heck, you know, like we have astrology. That if you ever read like Dr. Joseph Stanislav Grof, sorry, he goes into astrology and how they did a whole study, and it was way too high of a chance to be, it was just way too high of a chance where they were uncomfortable seeing how accurate it was. So we're seeing something that's been talked about a lot. We see it in mythology. We see it in what we're interested in. Like the very fact that we are interested in the very same things, whether it's playing a video game, watching a show, gossiping. Like we're interested in these storylines that we tend to fit in ourselves. And then we have these synchronicities, whether they're like a strange UAP phenomena or whether they're like something mundane. And they're constantly going on all the time. And so I connect that and I wonder, why am I having these experiences with Sasquatch? And then when I work through my fear, all of a sudden it's not there. Is it because I'm not looking? Is it because I have less incentive to? So these are some of the big questions that are being asked at this time. And how do we account for, if we accept that these individuals are seeing things that don't agree with our standard doctrine of the physical world? Like how do we put that together? How does someone that's totally sane and sees like a pterodactyl or sees like a tarantula as big as a vehicle, and it leaves physical evidence, how do we account for that? Because so far the way we've been accounting for it is just dismissing it and saying, oh, that person's crazy, until you have your own personal experience and you have to deal with the repercussions. But I think what it's showing us is like how reality works. And if you look at Jacques Vallée or John Keel, you start seeing they have their different interpretations, like control systems or like an opposing force of intelligence working with us. And I don't know the full answer, but I do know like we are seeing really, really like interesting phenomena that we are a part of. It's not like separate from us. It is almost like a reflection of us. And I call it mythogenic intelligence, where what we put out there, whatever it is that's also intelligent, is interacting with us, and it's doing so in a way that curates to whatever story archetype that we're going through. So just sit with that for a moment. You know, I know I've just thrown a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of pieces that you haven't been able to, like in the architecture of my conclusions. And I'm just trying to throw like the biggest pieces of how I got there. But just sit with those for a moment and think about your daily lives. The other thing I found is in questioning a lot of people is, for a long time we've all assumed like a weird experience, something that doesn't make sense, that breaks the laws of physics, was just a few people. But honestly, most people have had strange experiences they can't explain. They just been told they're that it's taboo to talk about, that they can't. And the truth is, it's not. We all have had them, and we're all like a part of this. So that's the direction I'm going in. And right now, I've been building like a Modern Explorer is the name of the YouTube channel. And we are starting to do walking tours that eventually will turn into expedition tours. Now, the way this is going to work is it's just a way for profit to build resources to continue having boots on the ground to continue exploring this. And what I'd like to explore is physical evidence and expand the scope of human experience, because I think what we're going to see is this overlay that, once combined, we really see how consciousness and reality interact, and how we are one of the driving forces in one way or another, the mechanics behind it. And I don't know the answers yet, but I do know that that is like the direction. So Modern Explorer is, that is what its job is going to be, and that's like the direction it's going to go. And it's it's an insane place to be, because everything I'm talking about isn't new. The Buddhist, the Hindu, all kinds of esoteric knowledge, they've talked about it in one form or another. So I'm just regurgitating it in maybe a more modern lingo. So I think that's the gist of it for right now, just like the basics. But I'll open it up if anyone has any questions or anything like that. And if I remember anything that else I wanted to say, I'll say it.